All right, so Bill Cosby. Let's talk about Bill Cosby, because I've talked about him before. I think I was one of the first ones to make jokes. I never felt bad about it because I was not divided like many comics were, who always were fans. I never thought he was funny. I've said that before. So it wasn't like, oh gosh, he's such a great artist, but he turns out to be this rapist. First of all, what is your answer to people who say, well, he deserves his day in court?
Well, I think he's very lucky that the statute of limitations is like 6 years in most states. In California it is. So I think he's
or that they're just allegations.
Well, yes, you can say that, but he's free. I mean, the country hasn't thrown him in jail. So, but if he's free, we're allowed to say when 40 people accuse you of something, there's a pretty good chance that it happened.
That's the difference. People have to understand size matters.
Yeah.
No, seriously. It does. I mean, you hear, yes, I'm very, very wary. I never used to do Michael Jackson has sex with little boy jokes.
Yes.
Because I don't know if that's true. I mean, over the years, it became a little more apparent it might be. But you hear, oh, Tom Cruise is gay. I've seen people make that joke on shows. I don't think I don't know. Nobody knows. But I don't think he is. Who cares? It's just, but that's a real just out of my ass allegation. But 40 women, many with no reason to be doing this. There's no money that's coming to them. They're not looking for fame because some of them already have it.
Well, it's not fun to go on CNN at 65 or 7 years old and say that Bill Cosby raped you in the 70s. I mean, there's no reason to do it. And people have to remember that 80% of rape victims never report it to the police. And 80% of rape victims are raped by somebody they know.
So you got into this just because you're outraged?
Well, I'm outraged by I actually know one of the victims who's not coming forward. And she said, this is exactly what happened. And I think there's probably a lot of people who are like, I don't want to go on TV. I don't want to make this what I'm about as a person.
I met a girl, I did a movie with someone in 1983 who had just come off a movie with Bill Cosby and had a horrific story. It's like, I never meet anybody of the female persuasion who doesn't have a story about Bill Cosby. This guy has put more people to sleep than warm milk.
Well, I think the question is, I think there's a larger issue, which is why is there so little outrage? And I think it's the same as, all the issues.
Why? You wrote a book about him. You give us that answer.
Well, 10 years ago I did. And what was equally opprobrious to me was the kind of assaults upon poor black people, poor black women especially. All the stuff he said, you're gonna have a DNA card in the ghetto pretty soon to determine if you're making love to your grandmother because you have a baby at 16, the baby has a baby when it's 16. He says, you do the math, you could be making love to your grandma. That's pretty nefarious, that's pretty problematic, but nobody cared about it, nobody paid attention to it. And I had heard some of those stories, I talked about them to a degree. So my point is that if we're going to find offense with what he said, there's so much arena there, so much area, so much real estate to talk about a bunch of stuff, including that. But Woody Allen have to be thrown in there, and Roman Polanski as well.
No.
You don't think so?
See, this is just what I said. It's not 40 people, it's one.
Well,
what?
I can't.
Woody Allen, it's one accuser who had every reason to hate him.
You mean?
Yeah, I think.
Right. Ronan Farrow as well.
Polanski, definitely. That's right. I agree. I have no quarter for Roman Polanski or Ted Kennedy. There's certain things you can't do. Can't drive into a river and not report it for 10 hours when someone drowns. And you can't have sex with a girl in the naughty place after you drugged her.
Amen. Amen.
But come on. I mean, that's the difference we're talking about.
You're exactly right that when these allegations come forward, it is tough to do this balancing act with due process and in the media and talking about the allegations. I think you're exactly right, and we have to do that. The 40 women at this point gets to the point that we think this is true, right? I do think the outrage question about why there's not much outrage, there was for a short time. As I write in my book, End of Discussion, the outrage cycle is that's right. The outrage cycle is super short. And a lot of times something that we truly should be outraged about is foisted off of the news cycle because of something that we really shouldn't.
But I think a lot of it,
powerful too.
I think a lot about it is like how funny they are. People don't want to believe it about Woody Allen because then you can't enjoy Woody Allen movies. So they instantly don't believe his daughter. People think Bill Cosby is so funny that it takes 40 accusations before we begin to think it's possible. I mean, if this was me, I'd be screwed at 2 allegations. You're like in a 17 to 19 allegation.
That's pretty generous. That's generous.
Judd, your last appearance on the show has been such a good one. But before we